Lobbying for life. Lawmakers feel the heat to pass important pro-life legislation. A father grieves. His dead son becomes a sad symbol of the migrants' plight. Security nightmare. World leaders converging on the UN for the Pope's speech challenge those who protect dignitaries. And her work lives on. 18 years after Mother Teresa's death, her followers care lovingly for the dying. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, September 3rd, 2015. Good evening from Washington. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. House Democrats push Pope Francis to address minimum wage, hunger, and the environment when he speaks with Congress later this month. In a letter to Francis, 94 House Democrats say showing solidarity with the poor, he sends a message of hope that could affect policy debates. Meanwhile, a pro-life lobby group urges Democrats to protect the unborn. Susanne LaFrankie reports.
Brian, the 5-month abortion ban is expected to be voted on in the Senate later this month. Supporters have unleashed a new video campaign. Today, they even reached out to Democrats, showing them the horrors of late-term abortion.
There's a dead baby person there.
Vivid images of aborted babies, organs being dissected, are shown to a near-empty Capitol hearing room. Just 9 Democratic Capitol Hill staffers came to watch the undercover Planned Parenthood videos. 2,000 were invited.
I'm just here for work and for investigation, so like on the clock at the moment. So I would rather not go on the record.
Susan B. Anthony List, a pro-life lobbying group, sponsored the screening. It's their hope the images change hearts, minds, and votes supporting the 5-month abortion ban bill.
When you look at these things that are happening on these videos, there's a lot of motivation that comes out of the hearts of people who've just watched those. So I think anything is possible.
Only 7 countries allow elective abortions after 5 months of pregnancy.
The campaign targets 4 senators and their constituents. Democrats Bob Casey from Pennsylvania, Joe Donnelly from Indiana, Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota, and Republican Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. The ads highlight research that after 20 weeks of pregnancy, unborn children can feel excruciating pain.
We're here to give you information if you'd like accurate information on the case. Thank you.
Outside the screening, Planned Parenthood staffers handed out flyers claiming the videos are a smear campaign. Pro-life supporters don't expect a veto-proof vote in the Senate. The more important vote, they say, is the presidential election. Brian?
Thanks, Susanne LaFrankie at the Capitol. And the push is on across the country to convince key members of Congress to support the bill and other pro-life legislation. We have Jill Stanek, National Campaign Chair for the Susan B. Anthony List, Skyping with us from Chicago. Outside of that Democratic stronghold in the Windy City, Illinois is a rather conservative state. What are you hoping to do there with the pro-life issues that you stand for?
We are hoping to call into account our pro-abortion U.S. senators, specifically today, Senator Mark Kirk, who was the sole U.S. senator on the Republican side to vote against the defunding of Planned Parenthood last month. We are going to challenge him today that if that comes up for a vote again this fall, to vote the right way and also to vote in favor of the 20-week abortion ban.
Do you have any hopes of actually swaying his vote, or is this really just making a statement?
Well, we always have hope, but you know, the other component is, yes, we're hoping to pressure him that even if morally he doesn't change his mind, politically he'll decide that it's the best thing to do. He's got an election coming up, and at this point, neither he nor his competitor are wooing pro-lifers, so why not do something that will attract us to him?
How does the Susan B. Anthony List work with state and local groups there to make voters aware of what their representatives are doing here?
Susan B. Anthony List is the United States' largest pro-life political organization, and we work to pass legislation on the federal and the state level, and also to elect pro-life legislators, both with a focus on women. So we will send expert witnesses to states. We will help states to, when legislation comes up, we will help states write legislation. And we are also responsible in part for a pro-life coalition caucus of women state legislators that is growing by leaps and bounds by the day.
How many more votes are needed to get this abortion ban passed at 20 weeks of pregnancy?
Well, the fact is that in the Senate, you have to have 60 votes to surpass a filibuster. And so there are 45 co-sponsors in the Senate. So we still need to woo over some Republicans who are on the fence and some Democrats as well.
And of course, the ultimate achievement is to do away with abortion completely, but this is seen as a very significant step in that direction. Jill Stanek with the Susan B. Anthony list, Skyping with us from Chicago. Thank you, Jill.
Thanks for having me.
Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. A county clerk in Kentucky will go to jail for contempt of court. A federal judge today orders Rowan County Clerk Kim Davis jailed until she complies with his order to issue marriage licenses to gay couples. Davis said thank you before she was led out of the courtroom in Ashland by a U.S. Marshal, but she was not handcuffed. Davis argues that her Christian faith will not allow her to sign licenses for same-sex couples. The father of 2 Syrian boys who drowned trying to reach Greece from Turkey says his only wish is to be with his children again. A picture of the lifeless body of one of the boys sparks an outrage and a call for action. Abdullah Kurdi collected the bodies of his sons, ages 3 and 5, and his wife from a morgue near Bodrum. He says his family was on an overcrowded boat trying to reach Greece after fleeing Syria.
All I want is to be with my children at the moment.
What do you remember of what happened on the boat?
The last thing I remember is when we got off the boat. An hour later, I got onto another boat with a Turkish man. There were 12 of us, and it was overloaded.
At least 12 migrants, including 5 children, drowned off the Turkish coast Wednesday when 2 boats carrying them to the Greek island of Kos capsized. Dramatic scenes out of Hungary today as police clash with migrants at a train station. Several hundred refugees packed the first train leaving Budapest train station, hoping to reach Austria. When the train stopped on a platform in the town of Bisk, the passengers refused to offload as police ordered. One refugee even protested by pushing his wife and their young child onto the tracks. Look for what unites, overcome that which divides. Words on a medallion presented to Pope Francis by Israel's president today. President Reuven Rivlin met with the Holy Father for about 30 minutes in the Pope's study. The Vatican says the meeting focused on Middle East peace and, quote, the urgency to promote a climate of trust between Israelis and Palestinians. Francis presented Rivlin with a new bronze medallion featuring a rock split in 2, held together by an olive branch. Want a close-up view of the Pope celebrating Mass in Philadelphia? You will need a ticket. To get within 5 blocks of the altar on Benjamin Franklin Parkway, September 27th, organizers say tickets are required. The 219 parishes in the Philadelphia Archdiocese will receive tickets for the papal Mass. Tickets will also be required for the Pope's speech outside Independence Hall. 5,000 will be made available online September 8th. For those who don't get tickets, 40 huge TV screens will be set up nearby. New England Patriots quarterback Tom Brady may play in the team's season opener next week. After all, a federal judge today overturns the NFL's 4-game suspension imposed on Brady. The NFL suspended Brady for his role in using underinflated footballs during a playoff game in January. Brady denies any involvement. After NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell upheld Brady's suspension, the league and players' union took that matter to federal court. Vice President Joe Biden defends the Iran nuclear agreement, calling it a good deal. He made his case today with a Jewish community in Davie, Florida. His comments come the day after the Democratic Senator Barbara Mikulski announced her support for the Iran deal. That vote gives the White House the votes it needs to get it through. Critics say the agreement sets weak standards to monitor Iran's nuclear ambitions. President Obama is back in Washington tonight after a 3-day trip to Alaska. The visit was designed to sound a warning about climate change. Wyatt Goolsby is at the White House tonight with more. Wyatt?
Brian, it's been a busy week for the president. He's toured a glacier, caught some fish, and even visited with some native Alaskan tribes. And throughout this trip, it's been obvious that he's been pushing a message that the U.S. should lead the world in combating climate change.
I'm here to tell you we got to do more. We got to move faster. We're not moving fast enough.
Throughout his trip to Alaska, the president hammered home a message. He says Americans must lead the world in creating a clean energy economy. It's the first time a sitting president has traveled to Alaska's Arctic. The White House made sure the trip was carefully choreographed to highlight the environment. The president photographed in majestic backgrounds.
Hi, everybody. We're at Kenai Fjords National Glacier Park.
Obama reached out literally to the selfie stick generation while hiking near a glacier. He even joined middle school children in some native dances. All the while, the president saying he wants to protect America's natural resources.
This is one of the reasons why we have shut off oil and gas exploration in this region. It is too fragile and it is too important for us to be able to endanger it in any sort of way.
But not everyone agrees with the president's full speed ahead approach in cutting greenhouse gases and carbon emissions.
I recognize the fact that we have some climate change, that humans have an impact on it, but we have to be careful what we do moving forward.
This debate will continue among presidential candidates and globally in the next few months. The UN is set to hold a climate conference in Paris in December, and the Pope Francis has said that he hopes that world leaders will take into account his encyclical on the environment into their talks. Brian?
Wyatt Goolsby at the White House. Thank you, Wyatt. Coming up, the Pope's visit to the UN presents an unprecedented challenge for those who protect dignitaries. And an interesting twist as immigrants and inmates craft chairs for papal masses in the U.S. It's Thursday, September 3rd, the feast of Pope St. Gregory the Great, father and doctor of the Church. He was a trained Roman lawyer known as a physician of souls. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. And the Pope's UN visit in 3 weeks will raise security issues and costs to new heights in New York City, where protecting a dignitary is a point of pride. New York police say they face an unprecedented challenge, especially on September 25th. That's when Francis addresses more than 160 heads of state at the United Nations. He'll then preside over a 9/11 memorial service, ride through Central Park, and then celebrate Mass at Madison Square Garden. Those hoping to see the Pope during the U.S. visit can expect security similar to what is used at airports. New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan unveils the chair Pope Francis will use for Mass in Madison Square Garden. Jason Calvi reports.
Pope Francis's smile graces New York, and in 21 days, he'll sit on this chair during Mass at Madison Square Garden. Immigrant day laborers crafted it. In Philadelphia, prison inmates work on the chair for his visit there.
It's definitely an honor.
And in D.C., crews are working on a third papal seat.
The back of the papal chair.
The papal coat of arms will not appear on the Pope's chair in New York.
The Holy Father said, we don't have to do that, so there would be a note of simplicity to that.
Pope Benedict's papal coat of arms is on this chair he used right here in 2008. But the coat of arms are not always on papal chairs. You can see this chair right here, used by John Paul II at World Youth Day in Denver in 1993, doesn't have a coat of arms on it. With or without the image, the chair is an important symbol for Catholics.
And a chair represents teaching authority. The man who occupies the chair of St. Peter, all right, is our Holy Father, the Pope, the Bishop of Rome. So wherever he goes, you want to have an important chair.
A chair he'll use in just a few weeks. Jason Calvi, EWTN News Nightly.
Very interesting. Thank you, Jason. Doctors in Canada are coming under increasing pressure to assist in taking the lives of their patients. Alex Schadenberg with the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition joining us from Rome. Alex, you're attending a conference there presenting on the assisted death and right of conscience laws in Canada. Bring us a very brief update.
Well, I've already been reporting on in the past, on February 6th, the Supreme Court of Canada struck down Canada's assisted suicide law and used language in that would also allow for euthanasia. Now, recently, just on August 26th, the Canadian Medical Association spoke about then the question of conscience rights for physicians. And the vote was 71% of the physicians at the CMA said that doctors would not have the right not to refer, meaning that somehow they're going to have some form of referral. This puts a great pressure on physicians who oppose euthanasia. In fact, Canadian doctors, 63% of them said that they're not going to participate in euthanasia, but only 29% said that they would not refer. This is a very serious issue for physicians who clearly oppose euthanasia and assisted suicide and being forced to participate by referral.
This discussion is always positioned as the right to die. Is there any consideration given to the rights of physicians to conscience?
Well, that's the whole thing. The argument is that people should have a right to ask for euthanasia and receive it. And the problem with this is that, really what they're doing is they're saying to the physician, when you legalize euthanasia, they're saying to the physician that what we're doing is we're giving the doctor the right and law to cause your death. It's one thing for someone to say, oh, I would like to die by euthanasia. It's another thing to say to a doctor, you're obligated to kill me. And that's actually what it's coming to in a sense. They're pressuring the doctor to either A, do it, and if you don't have to do it, you're going to have to refer. I'm going to make a comment that some won't like. Is it right to have to put somebody on the death train? That's the question here, because they're saying you don't have to necessarily do it, but you're going to have to send them to their death.
You're facing a very uphill battle. There are many more on the other side, aren't there?
Yeah. Well, what's happening right now is there's a lot of physicians working together. So in Ontario, for instance, the Ontario College of Physicians stated on March 6th that doctors would have to refer. But the Christian Medical Dental Society, the Catholic Physicians Guild, the Physicians for Life, and many other doctors who are opposed have banded together and they started a lawsuit against that. They're demanding the right of conscience.
Alex Schadenberg joining us from Rome. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be with you.
Up next, Jeb thought it was a joke, but the Donald was seriously dissing his Spanish and bestowing the dying with the gift of peace in the footsteps of Blessed Mother Teresa. We need to keep our eyes on the Son. Look at the personality of Jesus. In every instant, he never takes his eyes off the Father. A Thursday thought from EWTN foundress Mother Angelica. Let's keep Mother in prayer today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. A Republican presidential candidate, Jeb Bush, says he first wanted to laugh at rival Donald Trump's criticism of him for speaking Spanish. Bush says he thought it was a joke. The former Florida governor, replying to a reporter's question in Spanish, had criticized Trump speaking Spanish. Trump later said Bush should, quote, set the example by speaking English while in the U.S. Bush says Trump is trying to insult his way to the presidency. Meanwhile, GOP candidate Carly Fiorina is chiming in.
Mr. Trump is going to continue to do what Mr. Trump does, which is say all kinds of things, some of which are shocking, a few of which are outrageous, and many of which people agree with because they're angry and frustrated.
Earlier this week, Philadelphia Archbishop Charles Chaput took Trump to task. He challenged Trump's call for ending automatic citizenship for children born to immigrants who are living illegally in the U.S. Archbishop Chaput says Trump's idea, quote, plays on our worst fears and resentments. State Department documents show then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and her top staff pushed for the use of PDA devices that could be used for top secret information. Clinton has been under scrutiny for using a personal email server for high-level State Department business. Thousands of emails retrieved from that server were released this week. We have Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, a public interest group investigating and prosecuting government corruption. How was the Judicial Watch able to get these documents, and what did they show?
Well, we had to sue in federal court to get them. They weren't voluntarily disclosed, and they show emails among top security officials in the State Department, and they say essentially, if the top staff of Mrs. Clinton continue to push for devices that can handle top secret and secret information, blank, 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 of course all that is blacked out, what the response would be. But it's clear from the emails that they were pushing and being rejected by security officials in their effort to get a smartphone that can handle classified information. Now it later turns out, based on the emails that were released this week, as you highlighted, you have iPads being used by Mrs. Clinton, so who knows what went on in the end.
So we now have many of the emails that came off her personal email server. Those emails released show some documents that are now classified as secret. If they're so sensitive now, why weren't they then?
Of course they were then. Classified information is both marked and unmarked. You look at the document and someone who understands it has stamped top secret or classified on it. Other times there's classified material and it hasn't been marked yet by someone who knows better. Mrs. Clinton knew better. She didn't mark it, and according to the Washington Post, several of the emails that she created and sent had classified material in it.
And as Secretary of State, would it be her responsibility to mark it classified.
Absolutely. She has what is called original classification authority.
I thought so.
So she gets material, and she's supposed to evaluate it and make sure the classified material is either marked, both marked and handled appropriately and stored appropriately, which wasn't done on this separate server.
And I noticed when she talked about sensitive information, she said clearly that she was not aware of any email that was marked classified that went through her personal server.
She's changed her explanations. Originally she said she had no classified material. Now it's marked classified material. I tell you what, most of the government material that is classified isn't marked.
Is this a really sticky situation for national security? I mean, could there have been some serious leaks?
Oh, for sure. There's a news story out today that a hacker will sell all of her emails for $500,000. You can bet these emails that she had that weren't secured were taken by bad guys, and they have access to this national security sensitive information, which makes investigations and accountability for that misconduct all the more important.
President of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, thanks so much. We appreciate you joining us.
Hey, thank you, Brian.
Saturday marks the feast day of Blessed Mother Teresa of Calcutta. It's been 18 years since her death. As her canonization process continues, we receive special permission to see how the missionaries of charity carry on Mother Teresa's mission here in Washington, D.C. Catherine Zeltner gives us a rare look into the Gift of Peace House.
Prayer and memories of their foundress fill these halls.
Here at the Gift of Peace House, Mother Teresa's legacy is everywhere. Here are some of her relics, dishes, and linens she used, and this is the wheelchair Mother Teresa used nearly 20 years ago.
The missionaries of charity here are carrying on Mother's mission.
It's just the little things. Give them a glass of water when they're thirsty, to give them little food, or to just say, how are you doing?
The sisters care for about 50 residents dying of HIV/AIDS or suffering from mental issues. Most are all alone in the world.
This is a home where they can feel at home and a sense of belonging, and to a community where they experience love, respect, and their own dignity.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Julio is dying from AIDS and cancer. Doctors said he'd survive only a few days out of the hospital, but he's been living here for 2.5 months.
It is, of course, the plan of Jesus, of course, and also the care the volunteers and the sisters give to him. I think when you feel that you are loved, I think your life can be prolonged.
Another resident, Veronica, can barely hold back her gratitude for the missionaries.
I'm so lucky to be here. I don't have anybody, and I had a stroke. Sisters, they really take good care of us. Anything we needed, they just take care of it.
From doing laundry to making meals, the women in white and blue hope to bring the dying closer to Christ in the footsteps of a saint.
Her example would be something that we need to follow. Example of how to love without counting the cost. And Mother had given until it hurts, and she really died of love for Jesus.
Catherine Zeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Catherine. Blessed Mother Teresa, pray for us. Until tomorrow, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, watch again on YouTube. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. Good night. God bless you.